All right, let's talk comics.
Boomer moment. Hello. It is I, your humble host, your uncle, I can't use the uncle thing. Your friend, your pal, your cousin thrice removed, Christopher Peel famously of Bootlegger Comics. I want to thank you all for joining me in yet again another fine episode of The Creators Table. Tonight, my guest is the coolest Joe this side of the Mississippi. Without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Joe Sonntag. Hello?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. How are you, sir?
I am doing good. Felt a little bit under the weather earlier today, but feeling a little bit better now. So good to go.
Oh well,
thank you for having me.
Well, I am glad to hear it. Glad to hear you're on the mend. You sound good. Your voice is strong like bull.
That's right. That's the money maker. That's the face and the voice that's got me this far in life, and will continue to. You know, like that's what I sell myself on.
Dude, the voice is fantastic. I've been meaning to ask it. I'm sure you get asked this a lot. Do you do voiceover work?
I have before. Yeah, if somebody asks me to do a project, I'll check to see what it is, and see if I got the time to do it. But I'm definitely down to do it if I have the time, for sure. Yeah.
I've always had people tell me that I should do voiceovers. I do a lot of voices and stuff like that, but I tried it. I tried it, and I've always wanted to do it. I suck.
Really?
It's the acting part that is the hard part. The acting part is what kills me.
See, I would love to do that. I would love to do a voice role in a animated movie or cartoon or something. Yeah. I think that'd be a blast. I would,
oh my god!
There was when I was a little bit younger, back when I was still doing music. So I was still in I might have been in my early 30s at this point. So maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I worked with a guy who started to do his own cartoon, his own animated cartoon. Cool. And his goal was to get on Adult Swim or whatever the Cartoon Network animation was. Yeah. And it was really good. I can't remember what it was called, but it was really good. And I remember he wanted me and my band to come in and to do guest vocals on an episode. And they were 10, 15-minute episodes that he would upload to YouTube. And all this kind of stuff. And we went in and actually recorded our parts, and we were just being ourselves, which was kind of fun. But I was just like, man, I like this. This is, this would be kind of cool. It's kind of like being in a recording studio. You're in your booth, you're singing your lines, you're just acting the parts out and everything. So no, I would love to do that one day. I doubt it will ever happen unless I do it myself. But yeah, that would be fun. That'd be fun.
So you were in a band, huh? What were you doing there? Singing, playing an instrument, both? What was your role there?
Yeah, I was the lead singer of a band called Mine Enemies Fall for about 10 years of my youth. Wow. Yeah, I started the band when I was in my mid 20s. Ended it probably about my mid to late 30s. But yeah, it was a heavy metal band. It was a cross between probably Pantera and Lamb of God. So it had a mix of old 90s metal, but also kind of the more present metal at the time of the 2000s, you know, or the aughts,
Mhm.
whatever people call it. And it was great. It was fun. I loved it. Music is a big love of mine. Singing, love singing, you know, love the aggressiveness of heavy metal. You know, it's
Mhm.
very good therapeutic, which I needed it back then. I was a very angry young man for a number of years, and it was a great outlet to go and just put the lyrical content out there and perform. You know, performing is just fantastic. I loved performing on a stage. It's second to none. And I've always said, like, if you've never experienced performing on a stage, especially in front of like big crowds, it's hard to explain the high,
Oh
the
yeah.
rush, the high that you get off. It's so addicting. You know, it's so addictive. It's like a drug. And there's one thing I miss the most is probably performing live. Not necessarily touring, because that could be, you know, it's hiring and all that kind of stuff. It was
Sure.
fun when you're in your youth. But performing on stage, hearing the crowd, seeing the crowd, you know, I used to love talking to the crowd in between songs. You know, I was one of those frontmen that was very engaged with the crowd, you know, so like the music would stop and we'd always have our segments. You know, we'd play a few songs to get the crowd amped up. And then everybody else would take a break, and it would just be me and the crowd. And I'd just be bullshitting with the crowd, you know, for like 5 minutes or something, you know, just whatever
Sure.
was on my mind. I never had a plan. I just went in and just winged it. But it made the crowd feel like they were part of the show. And that was like
Oh, of
part of our
course.
live show. And it was that. And
Yeah.
it was fun. It was a good time. Good time.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome, man. Yeah, I've played in. I started out in music as well. I played in bands and I played guitar. I ended up singing frontman by accident, but
Oh, nice.
it stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know what you mean, man. Um, playing in front of people, and I really miss playing with people. Like I haven't played
Yeah.
in a band in decades now.
It's a fun experience, you know. I mean, like the bond of a band, you know. Like my band
Yeah.
had 5 members all together, including myself, and it was just being amongst the guys, especially when you're on the road. It's just like you and the guys against the world. You know, you're going out on the road, especially, you know, us. We were an independent band, so we would plan our own tours and we'd go out and cross the state. And you hope you got paid for gigs, and sometimes you did. Sometimes you played stuff for free, but you just, you know, you sell merch, so you made some kind of money. But you were
Yeah.
out on the road. You're going across the country, and all you could rely on was you guys. And you're out there having the time of your life, partying, having fun, living the lifestyle of rock stars, even though you're not. But you're living it because you're just like freedom. It's ultimate freedom. And you roll into town, play a show, you absolutely kill it. You sell some CDs, make some new fans, go to the next town 6-7 hours away, do the same thing the next night. It was an absolute blast. Absolute blast.
Oh yeah.
And I do agree
I
with
bet it
this.
was.
You know, going to shows loses its magic once you've been on stage, and it really does. Like, it's when I stopped doing music, and I was kind of burnt out when I stopped. Like, I don't even really go to shows anymore because I'm just like, I did it for so long. I spent so many times in bars and venues and festivals that I'm just kind of like, I don't really have a desire to go see someone else play, because when I do, it's almost like you know, it's the FOMO, right? You know, you feel like you're missing out on something because, like,
Oh
man,
yeah.
I should still be up there. Like, I could be
Yeah.
way better than this band. My band would kick this band's ass, you know.
Yeah.
We went
Yeah.
and saw Pantera a couple years ago on one of their first U.S. tours coming back. You know, people might be like, oh, it's not Pantera because the Abbott brothers aren't there, but the reformed Pantera in Indiana. We watched them, and their opening band, I can't remember their name. I don't want to crap all over them, but I was not impressed at all. And I was there with my former bass player and my former drummer, and we just looked at each other like, man, if we had this opening slot, if we were still playing and we had this opening slot, we would kill this crowd. There's no doubt about it. You know, and those are the things that I miss about when I go to shows. It's just like, I should be on that stage. I don't want to be out here in the crowd. I want to be on that
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get that. Yeah, I still go. I still go and check out shows. I'm very selective though. The last live performance I saw it's probably been like 5 or 6 years. I went and saw Dwight Yoakam
Okay.
at the WinStar up in Oklahoma, and man, that guy has still got it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we used to play Oklahoma all the time. We had a really good following down there in Pryor, Oklahoma City, a few places. I can't remember all the names, but we played Rocklahoma like 4 years in a row, which was a big festival in Oklahoma. And we went there and dominated 4 years in a row. The last time, it's funny. The last time we played there, we had just got our tour bus, and we bought this old Greyhound that was already converted to a tour bus. Had 6 beds, had couch, TV, like all this kind of stuff. Because we bought it from a former manager who had managed a couple bands and was trying to sell it and get out from underneath it. And we're like, we'll buy it. We started touring with the bus, which was great, and we rolled up in there, and it's funny because we're driving through, and we weren't playing the giant stage like the big national bands, but we were pretty well known on the smaller stages. And we're driving through this area, and people were lining up next to the bus and just being, like almost like chanting our name. They're like, "That's Mine Enemies Fall,"
Yeah.
like, and we were like, "Holy cow, this is a rock star welcome!" Like, this is
Hell
insane.
yeah.
It was the coolest feeling.
Well, this show, it's a little bit different from your typical comic show. One thing I'm fascinated by the creative mind.
Yeah.
And I've been doing the show now for a few months, and you see a lot of similarities in like mindset and sources of inspiration. But there's also a few kind of differences. Like one thing I'm noticing is a lot of guys in this sphere of comic books and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they start with music. So like I did, you did.
Yeah.
Scribe Comics,
Scribe, yep.
I know there's lots of Ethan. I mean, Ethan's a musician, right?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, yeah, he does. Patrick Quinlan was in a band. He's
Right.
doing
Yeah.
music too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I know PTP. A lot of people don't like him, and I've never really had much of a issue with him. But he was in music for a while as well. Like, there's tons of Art T. Bear was a drummer. Dale Keown was a bass player in a band. Right. It's really interesting the amount of people that started out in bands, or at least were in and out of bands, while also trying to pursue comic book creation. And I don't know if it's just a connection of the creation of art, because it's different medium, obviously, but creating music is much like creating a comic book. For me, when we were making music, obviously it was much more involved with a group of guys. But you were creating a story in a music form. Like when I was writing lyrics, I'm writing a subject matter. I'm telling a story within my song, whatever that might be about, And it was a very creative outlet to do that, to phrase words a certain way, or to, get the point of whatever you're trying to say. And it was very much the same as when you're doing comic books and creating a story. I'm like, it's so similar that I don't know why I never saw the connection before, because when I was younger, I grew up in the 90s, so it wasn't as popular as it is today to like comic books and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of, you didn't really talk about it too much because not everybody did it. It was maybe looked down at nerds, right?
Definitely more of a stigma.
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny because when I tried to break into comic books when I was in my early 20s, and then some things happened in my life. I ended up going in a different direction, and I was always in and out of bands when I was in my teens. And I remember hooking up with some of my friends after a few failed attempts, going to conventions, showing my work and talking to editors and whatever. My life was kind of in a upheaval at the time, and I was just looking for something new. And I went and saw one of my old friends I hadn't seen in a while, and their band play at a local gig in town. And I remember walking into this show and just being so impressed because, like, the last time I was playing with these guys, it was still garage bands, parties, It wasn't anything too impressive. But I'm watching them on stage, and I'm like, man, and I told them, I was like, you guys have a great sound, and you sound professional, you perform, which was great. And I just all of a sudden fell in love with it. And from that point on, I took an opportunity. They brought me into the band. Because one of their singer was going to leave. So they're like, hey, remember you back in the day? You can sing. You want to come try out? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And, things happen. We ended up forming a brand new band out of a couple different big local bands in town. And it was just a life changer at that point. I was like, this is it. I'm in music. I love it. Creating something from nothing, starting from just a riff and making a song out of it and then making an album. Performing, it was just, I was in love with it for the longest time. Still am, honestly, still am. But it's something that's much like comics, man. It's much like comics when you're writing a story, sitting down at the drawing board to draw something for the first time, and it's a blank sheet of paper, and then hours and hours later, it's this finished page of all of this artwork. You're like, I created a story. I created a page. I created
Yeah.
a scene right here out of nothing. Maybe it's that creative gene. I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting point you make. I mean, about music, because you're right. As a lyricist, you're telling a story. Well, obviously with your words, but even when you're writing the music, you're writing your guitar music and stuff. Like
Hmm.
that's telling a story. You're
Yeah,
telling a
yeah.
story through just the notes and stuff. So that's a
You
really interesting point.
capturing emotion, right? It's different kinds of emotion. With music, you're connecting to a more inner emotion that people get when they hear tones, they hear melodies, they hear lyrics, and they can relate or whatever. It kind of goes along with helping them deal with how they're feeling at the time, whether they're sad, angry, happy, whatever. Music is a great tool to connect emotionally with somebody, and then comics is a great tool to connect with the wonder. The wonder is its emotion as well, but the wonder and the fantasy and the excitement of a story.
Hmm.
So it both taps right into, I don't know, the technical terms or whatever it is. I'm sure scientifically there's words for this kind of stuff, but you get to those parts of the brain that you just connect with, and there's such a connection with music, and there's such a connection with comic book characters and stories, which is why you get so many diehards out there. They're still to this day in their 40s that love comic books, love the characters that they grew up reading, still,
Yeah.
in love with music and what it made you feel like. It's really two unique forms of entertainment out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of steering back towards comics. What did you collect when you were young? Did it kind of come later in life? Where did that come in for you?
Yeah, it started when I was younger. Probably when I first started reading comics, I was probably like around, I don't know, 8 or something. Like my
Okay.
mom would take us to the library, and the library would have a bunch of old comics, in a section. They were all beat up because they were just library books. But
Sure.
that's when I
Yeah.
first started kind of, getting into comic books. And they'd have us like Spider-Man and Batman and Superman, like all the popular Marvel and DC stuff.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I like the art. And then I ended up meeting a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine, like a year or so later. His name was also Joe, oddly enough, but he actually was a collector of comic books. Like he had a collection, which I never did. And so that opened my eyes to like, oh wow, like I'm just thinking these books exist in the library, and I'm just
Yeah.
grabbing. I had no idea that they were a series or that there was an industry
Right.
out there. And so I learned so much about comics through him and just looking at his collection. And he would be like, you got to check out this book. This is the X-Men. You got to check out this. And it's just like, wow, like that's so cool. So then I would start going and be like, mom, can you take me to the comic book store? Like I want to buy comics, And so then I would start doing my collection. And he was also a really good artist as well, for
Okay.
being like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, however old we were at the time.
Right.
And that I used to draw as well, but I never really adopted or dove into like drawing comic books until I met this kid and saw what he could draw, because he was drawing like Wolverine and Spider-Man and all this kind of stuff, and he
Hmm.
was pretty good for his age. And so I was like, man, I want to do that. So that really sparked my creativity of wanting to draw and collect
Oh,
comic
okay.
books. And from that point on, man, I was hooked in the fantasy world of these books. And I didn't even really read a lot of the books. I just was so captivated by the art
Yeah.
that I would just buy books and I would just flip through the art, and I could basically get a sense of what was going on in the story just by
Hmm.
the art, because that's the beauty of comic books. But yeah, no, I just started collecting. I was a huge collector after that, throughout most of my teen years until my early 20s was, when I stopped and started doing music. But for the majority of the time, like, yeah, I was just like, that was my life, comic books and drawing. That was it.
Okay. Um, so it sounds like you have a pretty well defined point that really lit that creative drive, at least when it came to art and comics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, like I said, it all goes back to meeting the other Joe and being
Right.
exposed to the actual comic book world, as opposed to beat up copies of 80s Spider-Man, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's like, have you ever heard of Jim Lee? Because Jim Lee was his favorite artist. He's like, you gotta check out these books. Jim Lee drew all these books. And it's like, have you heard Todd McFarlane? So he's telling me about all these artists. and introducing me to these artists and their works and the characters that they're connected to. And it was a big eye opener. It was like one of those moments, like it was what do they call it? An impact moment, right? It's an impact
Okay.
moment in life. You know, like some impact moments in life can be negative, but they stick with you. It's just an impact moment. You always remember it for your entire
Sure.
life. You remember where you were when that stuff happened. And that's one of them. That was an impact moment in my life, discovering this world, this fantasy world of comic books, and just how excited that was. It was just like, wow. It was a brand new world. It was amazing. Like all these comic books, and they were just you couldn't get enough of them. You could not run out of them. There was always something new,
Right.
always
Yeah.
something cool to look at, and that never went away. And it goes back to that moment of just going over to his house, meeting him for the first time, and just looking through his collections and being like, this is cool, man. Just covers alone, flipping through his long boxes and be like, this is so cool, you know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I was probably about 12 when I first started collecting, and what I first got into was GI Joe, and so that was like '86, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And man, GI Joe was just it for me. Of course, that was, Rambo was super popular. You had
Mm-hmm.
shows like Tour of Duty. It was still Vietnam was still a kind of a hot entertainment topic. So
Oh, right.
I
For sure.
gravitated to GI Joe, and I could just stare at those pages and those covers and just look at every inch. And I remember I went and I had my mom get me a pad of tracing paper, and I started
Nice.
tracing my favorite panels and my favorite covers. And
Yeah,
I'd be like, "Well, look what I drew."
yeah.
If only, right? But
It's I did this. I didn't do the tracing thing, but I did similar where I would just look at an image and I try to draw it, you know, and obviously it wouldn't turn out the same, but in your mind as a kid, you know, you're drawing a really watered down version of this image that you're looking at. And you're thinking to yourself like, wow, that looks really cool, you know, and
yeah,
that's kind of really how I developed my style, was just drawing already established poses or whatever that Jim Lee did, or Todd McFarlane, or Rob Liefeld, or any one of these artists that I loved doing. And I just kind of taught myself to draw doing that, not really knowing technique or anything, but
mhm,
just copying basically what people were doing. And it took years later where I had to really like start learning on why they did structure the way they did, or why
yeah.
their blacks were laid the way they were, and all this kind of stuff with lighting and whatnot. But that's really where it started. Was just like, that's an awesome image. Like, I'm in love with what this image of Spider-Man. You know, I want to draw that. And I sit down and I draw the best I could, you know, going back and forth, trying to match line for line, you know, and then draw the same image probably 3 or 4 or 5 different times throughout that period of time, trying to get it right, you know. It's good times.
So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm thinking, okay, there's something that separates, a fan from just enjoying the books, enjoying the art and stuff like that, to creating,
Yeah.
creating that something in that media. So, what do you think? What took you from reading comics, playing music, to then making comics?
I think it's because I always wanted to do comics. So throughout my
Okay.
teenage years, I was always drawing, doing my own comics at home or whatever, you know, creating my own characters. And then I tried to break into the industry when I was in my early 20s, for a
Mhm.
few years, sending my portfolio in and going to conventions and showing my work off. So I knew it was something I wanted to do. And I even remember when I got into
Okay.
music, I always thought for the longest time, like, I'm gonna make it in music, because you don't go into something thinking you're not gonna make it. You're always like,
Yeah.
I've got a drive, I'm going to make it, you know. And the
Yeah.
band I was in was a really good band. It had a good following. There was no doubt in my mind that this band was going to make it at some point. Um, but I always thought in my head, I was like, you know what, when I'm done with music and, you know, I'm getting older and I have a family, I would like to go back to doing comic books again, because that's a love of mine. And it
Yeah.
just so happened that, you know, my late 30s, the band was ending for various reasons, and I automatically, right off the bat, was like, I want to jump back into comics. And I had not really paid attention to comics or been in the comic book world for the entire time I was doing music, because I was so invested into music
Right.
that I just jumped back into it, and I had to like kind of reteach myself how to draw, and then just try to jump in like, all right, what's going on with the world today? Go to the comic book shop, like what's going on with these characters, because I had no idea what had been going on for the last 10 years. So I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons why I got back into wanting to do comic books again, because I was like, my music career is essentially over for what I was pursuing, and I'm not the kind of guy that just idly stands by and lives life. That's just not me. I've never been that way. Like, I've always been a dream chaser, so to speak. I chase the pipe dreams, like the stuff that most people would just like, they'll never happen. Why bother? I'm like, no, like I want that. I don't want to just go to work every single day for the rest of my life. Like, I want to have purpose. Like, yeah, I'll pay the bills. I'll do what I have to do. But like, I want a purpose in life. I want to pursue my passions and my love. And I did that with music, and I was very satisfied with the career I had in music, even not meeting that pinnacle of being signed and stuff. But I look back at that time and I got no complaints. Played some amazing shows, made some amazing music, great fans, great experiences. And now I was at a point where it's like, I want to do comics. I was in my late 30s. I was like, I got plenty of time. I got plenty of time right now to dust off the pencil, get back into doing it. And I dedicated myself for like 2 years to really get my skills back to the point where I thought I was good enough to start doing my book, and I was drawing all the time. And like I said, I put 110% into everything I do when I'm passionate about it. So like, I dropped music and almost instantly I was like, boom. And I had offers. People were like, hey, it sucks that My Enemy's Fall is done, but you want to come sing for our band? You want to do this? And I was like, nah, guys, like, I'm starting to do this. I'm starting to kind of whatever. And I was just like, boom, 100% into comics as soon as that band ended. And I didn't look back. And I was just drawing all the time and, tweaking storylines and revisiting old characters that I had in the past. Because I knew, I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do from now on. And here I am.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. Here you are. Look at you now.
Look at me now, Mom. My mom was always very supportive, by the way. I had some very supportive parents throughout my entire life with anything that I didn't pursue.
That's always great. That always helps, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what about, so I'm picking up on a work ethic here. You clearly have a really solid work ethic, right? Do you push that hard with a 9 to 5? Were you always kind of like just always pushing yourself no matter what you got into? Or was it really specifically for these, grabbing the brass ring type of situations?
I think that my parents instilled in me a really good work ethic in general when I was younger. And so I always had a drive to, if I was doing a job, is to do the best you can at the job. It's to go up the ladder, so I've always had that. But when you bring in the elements of something that you're passionate about, it's just you turn that volume up to 11, so like, I've got a good work ethic to show up on time to work hard, to be a dependable employee and all that kind of stuff. But when you're like, I'm passionate about this thing and I want to pursue this thing to make it my own, that's a whole nother level of commitment and work ethic. Like it's almost an obsession, really, honestly, is what it is. It's an obsession is what I would say. You talk to my wife, she would tell you the same thing. Like, it's an obsession for me. Like, I cannot not do something that I love. There's just no way. If you were to take music away, take comics and art away, I would be miserable. I have a great family. I love my family. Love my wife. Love my daughter. Don't get me wrong. That part of my life be very satisfied, right? That part of my life
I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean.
Yeah, outside of that, it would be miserable because I'm like, what am I here for? Like, yes, I can be a great dad and a great husband, but outside of that, what am I doing? I have never not been in a position my entire life where I have not been pursuing something that I love to do. So like, that's just my nature. I guess it's just how I was born.
That's really cool, man, because it really speaks a lot about your character. I've had similar interests and similar desires and stuff like that. I let fear stop me a lot. I let fear stop me from trying things. So my first love was film, and I was convinced I was going to be the next Kevin Smith.
Nice.
And, so when I really first started seriously writing, it was screenplays, and I was writing just all these, comedy screenplays. I wrote my own trilogy. Kevin Smith's got his, Jersey trilogy, and I had my,
Right.
DC trilogy of
Nice.
stuff all based on my buddies and stuff like that. And, but I was going to go to film school in New York and all that, but I just ultimately, all I can really blame it on is I just let fear stop me from doing stuff. And I had a moment where I was just like, okay, no more of that shit.
Right.
Let's keep going and let's see what happens.
Well, I mean, that's a real thing. I mean, there is a fear of failure that people can have out there. And just, I think that I was blessed or maybe cursed with being a very cocky, confident person, But I wasn't always like that. When I was a kid, and when I was a teenager, I was actually quite shy. I was actually a very shy person, but I had to grow out of my shell probably about my late teens, early 20s when I really wanted to pursue stuff. And I was like, I almost had to kick myself in the ass to do it. Like, going to comic book conventions and showing off my work was a terrifying thing. I remember the very first time I did it, I probably walked around for hours with my portfolio and didn't talk to a single person because I was just terrified to walk up to somebody and be like, hey, could you look at my art? And then eventually I ran into Norm Brayfogle, who was a really cool guy, rest in peace. But he was the very first person I ever showed my work to. I went to his table and I recognized his name from some Batman comic books and Prime and stuff like that. And he was there. I was talking to him. I had my portfolio and I wasn't even going to show him. He asked, he's like, is that your portfolio? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you want me to look at it? And it kind of forced me to be like, yeah, And so that was the opening to be able to actually, present stuff. And from that point on, it was like, gaining confidence as you went. But there was tons of things I pursued. I remember in my early 20s, I had a bug up my ass. And I was like, you remember arena football? Remember when arena football was big?
Yeah.
I remember watching arena football with my dad. It's just something to do in the off season between football. We were both big football fans. And I always wanted to play football when I was a kid. Never got an opportunity to. And the local team in Michigan was from Grand Rapids, which was about 40 minutes away from me. And they did open tryouts every single year. And I was like, I'm an athlete. I'm fast, and like all this kind of stuff. So I trained for a year. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go try out for, the Rampages. I think that was what they were called. And so I trained for a year by myself, working out and just, doing the best I could. And I went to their open tryouts, and I went there, and I can't remember how much it cost, but you paid the money to get in there. And I remember walking up to this place, and it was packed. There was so many people that were trying out, and I was walking up in the parking lot, and I'm looking at it, and there's guys that are bigger than me, more muscular, and all this kind of stuff. I was still in my early 20s, still fairly. I think I was like 170 pounds. Like I was lean. I had structure to my body, but I wasn't like a friggin' somebody that's been through college, or high school and college football like these guys. Right. And I remember turning around and walking back to my car. And as I was walking back to my car, I stopped. I was like, no, you got to do this. So I turned back around, walked into the building, and forced myself to go up there and go in there. And I was not really a match for everybody out there. I was overwhelmed, and that was known pretty quickly. I'm like, these guys have been training their entire life. You can tell that. But I still went through it. I still did. I forced myself to do it. It was a great experience, and it was just one of those things of getting over that fear of not doing something, not pursuing something you love just because you were afraid of failing. And that really helped me later on in life, especially when I became a front man. I never liked being in front of crowds when I was younger, because like all the attention on you, I'm just like, no, I would like to get in the back and just kind of sink into the back, and like I'll be a part of this, but let somebody else be in front. But I had to, like, I was the front man of the band, so I had to go out there. I had to talk to the crowd, and then after like a couple of shows, you just like, you know what, this is cool. Like all of a sudden, I'm getting attention. Like I'm actually, people want to see the band, but they want to see me. And all of a sudden it's feeding that ego, it's feeding that drive, that confidence builds and builds and builds, and like all of a sudden now the world can't stop you. You're walking through brick walls because you're 10 foot tall. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's just, that's just kind of how my cockiness and the confidence grew over time. And it's still stuck with me to this time. So like I said, it's a blessing and a curse, probably, if you ask my wife.
But I mean, you're definitely right. Like I love performing. I love I'm a natural ham. I always have
Yeah.
been. I was a class clown in school, and I just any opportunity I can to get in front of people and perform. I always was before. It was always to make people laugh. I love making people laugh.
Yeah.
Um, but then singing. Once I got into singing and playing guitar, like yeah, I totally. I relish the opportunity to perform in front of people. Like I go out and do karaoke. Like I love doing that shit. I remember on our honeymoon, my wife and I, we did a cruise, and they
Oh,
had
nice.
karaoke every night. And every night I went up there and was singing, and we hit one of our port of calls, and we're on the beach, and I'd see some of the people from the night before, they'd be like, "You're the karaoke guy," and I was like, "Yeah,
Nice.
I'll be there tonight. Tip your waitress."
That's awesome. It's funny you said that you wanted to be in film and write screenplays and stuff. When I was a kid, that was also something I wanted to do for a period of time. And I wrote, and I don't have them anymore. It was when I was like probably, I don't know, 13, 14 is when I did this. But I wrote 3 different, what you would call now screenplays, I guess. One was an action movie, one was a horror movie, and one was a fantasy kind of like Braveheart. Because I was just writing the things I was influenced by, right? So if I was really into Die Hard or Lethal Weapon, I'm like, I'm writing an action movie. Or Braveheart comes out, and I'm like, I want to write this kind of epic, medieval film or whatever, or horror movies and stuff like that. And that's probably I forget about that. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I forget about. That's probably the earliest I remember of actually sitting down and writing a story and writing characters and dialogue and crafting the story. And I don't know if they were any good. I can't remember. To me they were good. But that was probably the earliest I remember of really being in that mode to be like, I want to tell a story. And I never necessarily wanted to act, but I always remember telling my friends, like, we got to make this movie. Like, you're gonna be the star, and you're gonna be this part. And I've always tried to convince my friends, like, like, I have no idea how we're gonna do this because I have no idea how to film, but I've got this script, and it's gonna be called this, and we're gonna do this. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that I forget about sometimes.
I'm going to take a look at the chat here. I always neglect the chat when I'm doing the show. I get so wrapped up in the conversation.
Oh, it happens. It happens.
Let's see here. Subjugates, Cody from Subjace Comics.
Yo.
Going to shows. Oh, we already saw that one. Music is a gateway to creativity.
I agree.
Seems to be the case. You still got my I left that comment on the screen for like 30 minutes.
But hey, you were highlighting, you're part of the show. That's a good thing.
That's it. Right. It's a good comic. LOL. Then a series of bats came in. Hail Chris and Joe. Always a good supporter. And Subjugates again. Hail bats. That's the chat. Awesome.
Good to see you all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Share this out. Let people know we're live. Jump in here, have a fun conversation with the creativity that we're going to be talking about.
Hell yeah, man. So where did your first comics come from? Like what you talked about movies and stuff being an influence. Like where is your first comic coming from?
Like Reaper Destroyer, the one I've created?
Oh, sure. We can go with that one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so going back to when I was younger, I made a bunch of different comics, and they were just influenced by the comics I read at the day. I was big into Image Comics when Image Comics launched, so I loved the edgier characters at the time, a little bit more violent. So a lot of the characters I created during the time I was in my teen years was probably more based on like an Image feel. But I would sit down and I'd just be like, I want to create a character. And I would just create characters. I created a character named Cinder. It was just this big rock dude. He didn't really have too much of a design, but I was like, hey, it's cool. It's my character. So I'd start just drawing comics, drawing stories with the character, just basically imitating what I saw. And same thing with other characters I would create. But in my early 20s, when I was like really dead set and breaking into the industry, I had my portfolio like I was talking about. But I thought one of the best ways to show an editor that I could draw comic books was just like make your own books instead of making a 4-page sample of Superman or something. I was just like, I'm going to create my own characters and, do that. So there was a character I had called Dreadnought that was basically a Pit ripoff at the time. But, that was a character I really loved. He was a big hulking character. It's actually a character I might bring back. I had redesigned him because he looked too much like Pitt back in the day. But I'm planning on bringing him back and doing a comic book of him at some point.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that's how Reaper Destroyer started, It was just a character, a sketch I was drawing one day, and I kind of liked the character design, and I was like, I should do something with this, you know. And so I'm like, what should I do, you know? What should I call the character? And the name popped in my head. Just one, it was like Reaper Destroyer popped in my head out of nowhere. I was like, that's kind of cool. Let's go with that. And I would just start forming a story and just start drawing. You know, at the time, I never had a direction like I do now to sit down and plan out story arcs and character development and stuff. It was just basically like, I'm going to the page and I've got a scene in my head, I'm going to draw it. I've got another scene in my head, I'm going to draw that, and we're just going to put it together, you know? So the structure probably wasn't the best, but it was all the stuff I'm influenced with. And my influences come from comics, but they also come from movies as well. And, you know, some music, you know, obviously, but movies probably more than anything influence my storytelling, probably more so than comic books do, because I like the structure and pacing of series or movies.
Right.
And when I sit down and tell a story, I am thinking of it in a movie form. You know, like it's movie action in my head. It's not necessarily panels and stuff. You know, like I'm just like, okay, this would be cool. And so when I form a story or do the pacing, I'm thinking of movies, you know, and I'm influenced. Like the beginning of Reaper Destroyer issue 1 was heavily influenced by the beginning of The Matrix, where where the cops show up and you've got Trinity in that apartment building, and there's a fight that breaks out, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So in Reaper Destroyer issue 1, that stuck with me for the longest time. We start out set on a building, and there's a fight within the building, and people fly out the window, and the fight goes into the alleyways. But that was all inspired because of the Matrix, you know. So I mean, there's a lot of things in my life that inspire me to do stuff and help me form stories, and just, you know, like, oh, that's a cool idea. And the reason why I do that is I remember reading articles in like Wizard magazine or whatever when I was younger, and so many of my favorite creators or artists at the time would talk about like how they were influenced by the pop culture of the day. You know, Rob Liefeld was influenced by like Terminator with creating the character of Cable, you know, and stuff like that. And that would show up in a way of character design or story design within the books, because he was pulling from something that was popular, pulling from something he liked. And so that's always stuck with me. Like, you know, if I get inspired by a movie, I have no problem being like, that's cool. I want to take that idea. We're going to make it my own. We're going to tweak it, but that's a cool idea. I'm going to take it and put it into the book or put it into the story or create a character. You know, so I mean, a lot of my inspiration comes from that, I would say.
You know, that's interesting you say that, because I seem to be saying that a lot, because I think the same way. When I'm writing a story, I think of scenes. You know, to me, I will literally refer to it as a scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, not a panel, not a page, but in this scene, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then when I did my first comic book back in like the 2003, 2004, when we put that out, I always referred to them as episodes. You know,
there you go.
Episode 1, episode 2. But yeah, I'm very much the same way of when I'm writing a story out. I always think of it, of scenes. And I, you know, one thing that can inspire me is I'll just get a scene will just pop into my head, and I'll think, okay, that's awesome. I got to build a story around that. So in this, you know, universe I'm creating, I have this other story that's in a long line of stories that need to be worked on. But
right.
I had this somehow, for some reason, I had this mental image of a A-10 warthog battling a dragon. Nice. And I just saw, like, you know, when that A-10, that mini machine gun just blasts all the however many thousands of rounds a second.
Right.
I just had this vision of shards of dragon scale just flying off.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, okay, there's something. Let me write that down, and I'm going to work that into a story somehow. And,
yeah, I do the same thing, and maybe that's just a creative mind working at pace there. But there's some scenes that are coming up in the new book that I haven't drawn yet, but they're in the book to be done, that were kind of like that. There's just something popped in my head, and I'm like, how can I work this into the story? And it's very easy at that point. Like, well, okay, you know, that's easy. I could do this. This will work. Yeah, that's great. You know, and now you have a visual, and that's kind of like how I write. I write pretty much everything in my head. I don't spend a lot of time on a computer typing things out and doing drafts or something and going back and forth. I sit here mentally and constantly see the book play out in my head, whether it's in images or it's in motion, but I see it from scene to scene. And how am I going to do this? And what scene is where we're going to flow once this scene is done? What are we going to do? Where is the scene going to change to? Because I've got two different stories in my book, Reaper Destroyer. We follow the main characters, and then there's a B story that's going along as well, and then I have to balance going back and forth between the two stories.
Right.
And I got to pace it well, but I'm just like, okay, like if it's a TV series, I know how they segue to a different scene. Like this scene ends, and then all of a sudden, boom, here we go. We'll go and spend some time now with this scene in this series or movie or whatever. And so I see stuff play out like that, and so I'm just like, all right, I know I want to do this in the book. I know I want to do this in the book. How are we going to bring these all together? And it just starts piecing itself together in my head and just kind of starts flowing as this full story with room to add or subtract or change as we go, and some of it is just based on like, hey, this would be a cool scene for this book. How do I want to work that in? And there's one scene I'm thinking of right now. I won't tell everybody, but it's a really cool scene. And it's actually something that just popped in my head not too long ago. And I ended up replacing it with the idea that I was going to go with, because I was like, man, this is going to work so much better. And it's so cool, so much cooler than what I was going to do here. It was just because I saw something or I was listening to something, because I'm constantly listening to podcasts of various different things, whether it's, theology with religion, or it's, back, behind the scenes with movies or politics or whatever. I listen to so many different things, but something will be said, and it'll click in my head, and all of a sudden a scene will pop in my head of something that I'm listening to, and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how I can work that into the new book. And I'll be like, all right, we'll replace this scene with that. It'll work perfect. And boom, there you go. And it's the story doesn't change, but the way we're getting to the story does change, and in a better way.
Nice. So one thing I wanted to you kind of hinted at this a few times is how you write and how your writing process works. Personally, I am a very chaotic writer. I don't write in a linear fashion.
Okay.
I may start that way, but then I'll get an idea for the end and I'll write the ending, or then I'll just get the idea for, a battle or what have you, and I'll write that part in the middle or something like that. And sometimes I'll go forward, sometimes I'll go backwards. I just kind of go all over the place. I'm trying to experiment with being a little bit more organized and try like outlines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing a few things that these submissions where they have like word count. They want you to stay within a certain word count, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm experimenting with some prose right now, but
it's not a bad thing to do. I mean, to be a little bit more disciplined, that's not bad at all.
Right. But when I'm working on stuff that's completely my own, it's just utter chaos. So what does that look like for you? I mean, we've kind of gotten a little bit of insight. Right?
I
write. So something happens and you've got an idea. Like how does that go from there?
I write off an idea because I have an idea of what I want to do in each issue of the story arc. It might not be fully fleshed out yet, but I know the crux of what I want to do in the issue. And then as long as I have that, then I'm fine. I can put that on the shelf until I get to it. But I write in beats, I'm like, again, the scenes pop in my head. I have like 3 specific scenes usually in a book that pops in my head, like the beginning, middle, and end of the book, that I kind of know what I want to do. And it's based off these 3 big scenes. And then everything else gets kind of intertwined within that. So I usually know how I want to end the book, how I want to start it. And then a significant, middle of the book that's going to be like, juice you back up to get you ready for the second half of the book. And a lot of times it's based off maybe action for the most part, because I like action. Even though I'm experimenting a little bit more with storytelling in this book, because the first book was it was a adrenaline ride. There was a lot of action, good storytelling in it, but a lot of action. And I wanted to kind of pull back a little bit and just slow down the pacing to begin the second book with before we ramp it back up again. But when I was drawing Reaper Destroyer issue 1, I had a couple ideas scene wise what I wanted to do in issue 2, and that was like driving the storytelling. And I was like, all right, I know I want to get to this because visually in my mind I can see drawing this. I can see it's going to be really fun to draw, and it's going to be visually fun, fun for the audience to see. And that would drive me going forward and be like, all right, I have to get to this point. It works within story, but this scene specifically. I'll tell you one, there's a certain scene that I've been working on for probably 20 some odd years. It was supposed to be what was going to happen in the original Reaper Destroyer issue 2 back in 2007 when I was originally working on it. And it's going to happen at some point, but I keep pushing it back because I just haven't found the right spot to put it within this story. But there is I've always wanted to do this big fight between Reaper Destroyer and a bunch of Uber, like I call them Uber ninjas, like cybernetic ninjas across the rooftops of New York City. It's going to happen. And I was originally going to put that as the opening scene for issue 2, like it was originally, but the story I'm developing, it tweaked and it changed and it developed legs of its own, and it's like that it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't time for that. It's like I keep pushing that off, but it's gonna happen one day. If you guys follow me, you're watching this podcast right now, one day in the future you're gonna read an issue of Reaper Destroyer and that scene's gonna be in there, and you go like, oh, I remember that dude talking about that, and he finally did it. So there's stuff like that all over the place. Like I've got scenes of a bunch of different stuff that just doesn't work right now, but eventually I'll get to them. But that's just my mind is, maybe chaos is chaotic, like you said, is the right way to put it. But it makes sense to me. And my editor, Kayla, it drives her nuts because she's just like, hey, do you have a script I can look at yet? Or do you have, where are your notes? Send me your notes. I'm like, it's all up here. All up here, baby. Like that's where it is. And she's like, you should write some of it down. I'm like, why? She's like, because you'll forget it. I'm like, I don't forget a damn thing. You're like, all the stuff I have planned for the story arc or future issues or other characters in that story is in my head and it doesn't leave. Like I remember it. I might make a couple notes here or there. If I have a specific like character name or name I discovered in a podcast, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool name. What's the meaning of this name? And I'll look it up. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I want to use that someday. I'll write that down. But like idea wise, I don't know. For some reason, I just write everything in my head until it comes time to script the book. Then I actually sit down with that, to go off of, obviously. But everything is, the script is in my head, the drawings are in my head, and it stays that way until the book is fully drawn.
Wow, man, that's incredible. I'm terrible at notes. So what I've been using is I've been utilizing AI. So what I do is I just throw all this stuff in there that's in my head.
Yeah.
And then it just stores it. Like I'm like, okay, this is the Bible for whatever story.
Oh, there you go.
And it stores it, and then I'll be at work or whatever, I'll see something or I'll hear something or I'll read an article about something, and it gives me an idea for a story, and I'll get out my AI thing and punch it all in and put that as story Bible for this one. And I've got like flipping like 15 stories now in my stable.
Nice.
But I've got the ADHD and all that.
Okay.
And all that dyslexia and everything.
I got dyslexia too. Craziness.
Right. It's such a great tool to help me stay organized, because I'm 52. I forget stuff all the time.
I got you.
And so it's been a great tool for me for staying more organized with my stories. And I mean, I know AI is a bit of a sensitive subject out there, but it's not writing my stories. It's just helping me keep organized. So
right, and I think that's the biggest thing right there. Like I'm anti AI when it comes to like if you're using it to write your stories or to draw or create images. I'm not about that. However, there are aspects of that. There's my editor right there and a writer for my company, Superior Press Comics, Kayla. Great to see you.
Welcome, Kayla.
But AI can be useful for certain tools when it comes to stuff like that. As long as people aren't relying on it to tell the story and to do the heavy lifting, then I'm at a point right now where I'm like, okay, I can overlook that. That's fine. I use AI for a lot of like banners and stuff for YouTube because they're just easier to do. It's fun,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, like writing wise, like, and I've had arguments with people in the past that write with AI, or they create images with AI and they try to make comics. I'm like, that's not comics, man. In fact, that's an insult to the medium to bring in a tool like that. But how you're using it is probably fine as far as, like, notes and whatever, categorizing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it can be a tool utilized right, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I use it for when it comes to images. I just use it for like thumbnails, little stuff like that. Little what did I did this the bootlegger pledge, where I pledged that we'll never start another campaign before the previous one is funded. And I created a little based off of the old Comics Code Authority. So I used AI to make that, but it just can't. I mean, I know it's getting better all the time, but it can't. Well, right now, for me, it cannot replace what a human brings to art.
No, it never will. It will be used. It will be used that way. It eventually will be used that way, but it will never replace. Which is why, when we talk about entertainment, I mean, you're going to have a period of time where natural human ingenuity is going to be replaced by AI. However, I do believe it's going to be circular. There will become a time when you get too much AI slop that people are going to be then thirsting for the human creativity again, and people will start going back to handmade things, human created made things. So I think AI is here to stay. It's only going to keep getting better.
Yeah.
But I'm not as doom thinking as I was. I'm not as black pilled as I used to be with it, because I do think that people will get sick of it after a little while, because there'll be so many people putting out just crap out there that don't really know how to create, but now they can because of AI, and it's going to be a watered down, soulless version. Like, I mean, AI makes some great music. I've seen some music apps where it'll kick out some stuff. I even use AI songs for some intros or whatever, and I'm just like, wow, like, it's really crazy how good AI is, but a human didn't make it. The vocals, the passion, the way you tell a story, with lyrics, or the emotion out of someone's voice is not going to be captured. It's just a copied version of AI, and you can't connect with it like you can connect with an artist pouring his heart out, his or her heart into a song, and it connects with you personally.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that out of AI music. And I think it's going to be the same thing as with movies. It's going to be the same thing with comics. Eventually it'll come back around, and all of us original creators will still have an audience, even though AI will probably still become this juggernaut of thing we got to deal with. It's just the way the world's going.
Yes, 100%. And, I do think there's going to be occupations that could possibly become obsolete or just greatly reduced from a human standpoint, but it's going to be stuff like attorneys, contract attorneys, things like that. Yeah. Pharmacists are already being replaced.
Yeah, there's a lot of jobs that are already being replaced with computers or AI or whatever. Like, that's going to happen. Why?
I'm sorry. That comment got me.
There you go, Alex.
I use AI for memes and shit posting, but I don't value it.
There you go. That's how you do it.
Oh,
that's
my
how
God.
you do it. AI can be fun for entertainment, and I found that it can be fun to make funny videos and there's funny images, and it helps with certain stuff. But that's about it. Like everything else. But there are business aspects of AI that work very well, like you said. Contracts. You could have AI write up a contract, and they're just going to pull from actual contracts out there, and they're going to put together a very good, solid contract. You got to go back and read it through, and everything's there, and boom, there you go. You present a contract to somebody if you're trying to get somebody under contract. So, I mean, there are things that will be useful going forward in the future, but the creativity that we have as comic book creators or musicians or whatever, it's going to be a threat to us, no doubt about it, but I don't think it's going to put us out to pasture like a lot of people do. If you listen to some of these AI people out there, they're like, oh, your time is over. It's, I can do whatever. And they're like almost gleeful about it. I'm like, all right, dude, when everybody, it's a dime a dozen, can program something, then you're not going to mean a damn thing to anybody. AI will take off, and there'll be a handful of people doing everything for everybody. and you are going to fall into the wayside because everybody can do it. You're not going to be special at all. But you know what you can't do? What I can do. And I will always be able to do that. And it will always be something that's going to be sought after or sought after by people that love original art or love music or love passion. You don't want to create or connect with an actual human being. That's what I have over the nerd in the basement that can program C-Dance or whatever, grok, like I'll always have that over those people. You will always
Very
have that
well
over those
said.
people.
Very well said, and I agree 100%. Well, Joe, we are at the end of our time here.
Yeah, this was fun.
Did you? I had a great time. I thought this was really
I
really
love
great
conversations like
conversation.
this. Yeah, it's nice to come on and just have a conversation without having to really pitch something so much. I mean, like if you guys are interested, I do have a comic book called Reaper Destroyer. It's about a man who's
Right.
trapped inside a supernatural suit of armor and inhabited by the ancient spirit of death who's trying to possess his soul. It's very much dark fantasy based. If you like the old kind of anti-hero comics of the 90s, you're going to like this, but it is very much a updated flair of storytelling for today with amazing art, if I do say so myself. Fantastic art. It's great. You're going to love it. You can go check it out at superiorpresscomics.com and or Indiegogo. Reaper Destroyer 2 is live now. And Bootlegger, thank you for having me on, man. Chris, this was great. Like I really enjoy fun conversations like this and diving into creativity and how that all works.
Absolutely. I find it fascinating. It's again here in this episode, a lot of similarities in our journeys, similarities, but differences, right? Like,
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. So before we go, I wanted to share one story. So I had
Okay.
Dan Lawless on a few weeks ago.
Love Dan. Great
And
dude.
oh yeah, man, awesome guy. So he was telling me about growing up. He and his siblings. His mother was big and really loved art, and she encouraged them to express themselves in art and expose them to art. And I hear similar things from musicians too. You'll hear, oh, like my dad loved blues, and that's all he played, and now the blues guitar player, what have you.
Yeah.
I am the caveat to that scenario. My mom hated music. She hated music. My mom and dad split when I was 4, so I grew up with my mom and my grandma. Every car my mom got had an AM only band radio.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that I didn't even know those existed, but that's all she had. And it wasn't even like fun stuff she was listening to. It was like medical, like surgeons, like talking about brain surgery and stuff. Not like Dr. Pimple Popper. I popped this real nasty one today. No, it was like removing the frontal lobe cortex of the hypotenuse labia. Oh shit, labia. Wrong word. Wrong part of the body.
That's malpractice right there. Suit going on.
Well, so I thought that I love the similarities, and I really am interested in the differences. So thank you so much for coming on. This was such a good time. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next week on the Creators Table when my